orthophosphate is introduced and monitored. The combined effect of these two is that lead, in most cases, is reduced well below regulatory standards. Remember that it is impossible to remove all hazards from any water source. All we can do is reduce them to safe levels. There's also another way lead is introduced to the water supply, which is more uniquely a bottled water issue than a tap water issue. Leaded gasoline is not used anymore, but it had been for a very long time. The lead in the air spewed from the engines using this type of gas has since settled to the ground and is now ubiquitous. It gets incorporated into plants, and it also enters groundwater supplies. Thus, if the water supply comes from groundwater and it isn't carefully regulated, it could contain high amounts of lead. This brings us to the distinguishing difference between tap and bottled water, to the root of the problem. Tap water is regulated by the EPA, that's the Environmental Protection Agency, while bottled water is regulated by the FDA, that's the Food and Drug Administration. The FDA has considerably lesser quality control standards than the EPA, and on top of this, much of bottled water is exempt from these standards altogether because of a legal loophole. Bottled water companies must only comply to FDA standards if their product crosses state lines. Thus, many companies will have facilities in separate states to avoid these costly quality regulations. In fact, it is estimated that between 60 to 70% of bottled water is exempt from the FDA standards because of this. Also, carbonated or sparkling water is completely exempt from FDA standards. So not only are bottled water quality standards lower, sometimes they aren't even mandatory. Some specific differences between the two policies include the following. Fecal coliform like E. coli is prohibited by the EPA, but is not by the FDA. No filtration or disinfection requirements for the FDA, thus no need to test for cryptosporidium or giardia. FDA regulations exempt bottled water plants from testing for some carcinogenic and generally toxic compounds like phthalates. PET plastic, which some bottles are made from, stands for polyethylene terephthalate. Water, being a powerful solvent, has the capacity to leach small amounts of this into the bottles that you drink from. So considering all this, why is bottled water still so prevalent? Bottled water is the fastest growing and most profitable sector in the entire beverage industry, and lobbyists work to keep the regulations the way they are for company profit. According to a 4-year study conducted by the Natural Resources Defense Council, the NRDC, 1/3 of the bottled water tested contained levels of contamination which exceed allowable limits under either state or bottled water industry standards or guidelines. Nevertheless, some strides are being made. Several cities are making proactive decisions about this situation and are banning the use of city tax dollars on bottled water. San Francisco, LA, Phoenix, and Chicago have done this. What you can do on your own is simply stop buying bottled water. But if you're still concerned about the quality of your tap water, the best option is a point-of-use filtration system. Brita is the most popular of these, yet it has the lowest cleaning potential. The highest rated, according to waterfiltercomparisons.com, is from Aquasana. It removes significantly more impurities than Brita for roughly half the price. Comparing this to bottled water, you'd pay 10 cents per gallon for point-of-source cleaned water versus between $1 to $6 for bottled water, which isn't even regulated.